So when you find that balance, boom, you get the results. And then you build the culture because people are in there consistently.
I had huge velo gains. Went from I think I got up to 97 in front of some scouts, had an incredible sophomore year.
First time I picked up a ball, my goal was just to throw it as hard as I possibly can. And here I am at 28 years old teaching guys how to do it.
Fronts, 1-2 on the way. North
Hey guys, welcome to the Kova Sports Brick by Brick podcast. My name is Tejay Antone, and I'm a big leaguer with the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm also an owner at Kova Sports. This is my partner, Jeremy Kivel. He played with the Reds organization for 7 years before going full-time into player development. We bring this podcast to you because we wanted more time with y'all. Instagram, we kind of got stuck in the 1-minute post and couldn't clearly convey our thoughts and educational content to you at its fullest capacity. So we wanted to start doing a podcast. We want to bring a fresh insight to the game of baseball and focus on player development with interviews from active players and coaches in the big leagues to our thoughts on how to train future studs. We want this podcast to give you an inside look to the next level of baseball. With that being said, today's episode, with this being the first episode, I wanted y'all to learn a little bit more about us, how Jeremy and I met, how Kova Sports became a company, and taking the game by storm. So with that being said, let's introduce my brother, Jeremy Kivel.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Yeah, so like TJ said, I think today really our goal is just to give you guys a little backstory on us and give you a little background there, and then more importantly, giving you guys the background of how Kova Sports started, and just the road to be where we're at now. But I'm just going to start with myself and give you guys a little backstory of myself in relation to the game of baseball specifically. So I am from Texas, primarily the Houston area, kind of touched base in Dallas, Conroe, kind of bounced around. Come from a little bit rougher of a background, but I got introduced to the game of baseball at 8 years old, and from there it was history. First time I picked up a ball, my goal was just to throw it as hard as I possibly can, and here I am at 28 years old teaching guys how to do it. So it all worked out at the end. But I want to give you guys a little bit backstory, the pipeline into my professional career. So I started off, like I said, at 8 years old, was, a standout player, always threw the ball really hard, just in local little leagues in the area. And, I grew up and played in, almost played in the Little League World Series, had a really good group of guys that I developed with from the ages of 8 to 12. And then from there, I obviously went into high school at 14. We had a pretty good high school program. We had really good baseball in the area. From that point forward, it was a little bit of a struggle for me because I threw hard, but I didn't have the best command in the world. So that was really a big focus of mine. So that's where kind of like my experience, as a coach now started. Like, how do I improve my command, and all the things inside of that. But I played at Spring High School, where I didn't make varsity until my junior year, actually, which is kind of crazy. But there's a lot of reasons why that didn't happen, and maybe one day we can have a podcast where we get into the politics of baseball. I don't know. But I made varsity my junior year. I ended up just kind of like, hey, Kivel, like, we're going to put you on varsity. At the time, I was doing martial arts, and that was taking most of my focus up at the time. And it was, kind of like a decision make or break for me. Like, do you want to do baseball, or do you want to do MMA? And I chose baseball just because it was my first love at 8 years old, and I had to commit to that and ride that out at least through high school. But I got put up on varsity, and I started throwing, and I was throwing like 93, like out of nowhere. Like, who's this guy? Just got up on varsity, threw in a game. They're like, yeah, you were throwing 93. Like,
yeah, no prior training either, right? Did you do like lessons or anything?
No, and a little bit, but that was after I had started throwing hard. Yeah. I knew I needed to kind of refine some stuff.
At that age, what do you think like taught you to throw hard when you were that age?
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of touch on this at the end too, but really, it's very simple, just like all the training stuff is too. My goal and my intention, as an 8-year-old and on was to throw the ball hard, and that's what I loved, absolutely loved to do. So what did I do? Throw the ball hard. I
Yeah.
would go on the side of the house and I would throw the ball as hard as I can. Um, and your body's going to adapt to the demands placed on it. Your nervous system's going to adapt to the demands placed on it. So that's why we do maximum effort throwing. But we can get into the training stuff after this. So which I can't wait for. But so I got put up on varsity, was throwing hard. Everybody started kind of to get to know my name in the area. Didn't have a ton of schools looking at me, obviously, because I just didn't have the exposure. But I ended up, playing for some random teams I picked up for and got some scholarship offers in the area. Obviously, I was out there. It was probably like 90, 95, sit 92, 93. So I got a lot of, good offers there from like SFA and some other, various JUCOs in the area. But I didn't really get to make a big name for myself as far as like my draft stock goes. So that's where my best friend Thaddeus, kind of put me on with the Banditos. He was actually on that 155-0 team. It was like, it was like 11, 12, 13 where they went 155-0. So my best friend had big ties with the Banditos. He talked to Ray DeLeon, and it was like, hey, we got this guy Kivel. He throws 95. And Ray's like, yeah, right. Who's Kivel? So he invited me up to throw a bullpen. I was throwing 95 in the bullpen. And he was like, all right, you're going to Jupiter.
Yeah.
And that's really like kind of where the Kova story starts, I guess. And we'll get to that. But I go to Jupiter. I show out, I'm, throwing mid 90s in front of, 30, 50, 60, however many scouts, an unbelievable number of scouts.
Yeah. So just to give you a little insight, Jupiter, Florida is a big perfect game national tournament. And it's you have to win a perfect game tournament to be invited to Jupiter. And then a lot of the scouts, area scouts, cross checkers will go there and see really big name dudes. So it's a very big tournament for high schoolers.
Best way to get exposed, especially to professional scouts. Let me backtrack a little bit. I actually committed to the University of Houston on essentially a full ride scholarship. I just went to their camp and I was throwing 96, and they gave me the offer pretty much, on the spot, gave me the tour and all that. So I committed to U of H. It was awesome, man. I kind of, wanted to go there. It was close to home. It was like a 30-minute drive from my house. So really close to home, committed there. So I'm at Jupiter, with that commitment. And they were actually there and they saw me throw. And I think they knew in the moment, like, okay, he's probably not coming here now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I go out to Jupiter, and that's where I meet Tejay for the first time. And he's this big, gigantic dude. Like at the time I was like probably 5'10", 5'10"-ish maybe.
Yeah.
Tejay's like 6'5", and I'm like, who is this guy? I remember you standing next to Jackson McClelland.
Yeah.
You guys were like standing next to each other, and I was like, oh my God, these guys are
Two
big
titans.
donkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah, big old boys. So we had an unbelievable squad there. A good amount of big leaguers. You, Austin Dean. Who else? Who else played on that team?
CJ Hinojosa, Courtney Hawkins,
CJ,
Rock
Courtney
Rucker,
Hawkins, Rock Rucker,
me. There were I think
Nick
every
Williams.
single
Nick Williams, big leaguer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
so
every
like
single
4
person
big leaguers
on our team actually end up getting drafted. Every person on our team was a D1 commit, if I'm correct. I mean, our team was it was stupid. It was stupid.
It was dumb. Yeah, but that's where I met Tejay. That's where our relationship kind of started. But going forward into my high school career, going into my senior year, I, was a highly touted guy, probably going to be a late first rounder, maybe second rounder. And then third, fourth game of the season, I'm playing outfield and I tear my ACL. Funny thing, that's kind of where the whole physical therapy mindset started for me. And I started to get an interest with like injury, and I came back from that and that whole process. That's where that started for me. And then and just dealing with adversity too. And that goes a long way. Just kind of having a challenge put in front of you. But we can get into like rehab and all that stuff and other podcasts. Yeah. But obviously big bummer, blowing out my knee. Didn't really get the pitch. I pitched one game and I was throwing mid 90s, upper 90s, and the Reds saw what they needed to see. I'm pretty sure their cross checker was there that day. Ended up getting drafted by the Reds in the 10th round, having only played one game my senior year, at 18 years old.
Yeah, I think you were going to be like probably a top 5 rounder for sure. Probably a top 3 rounder out of high school, especially if you pitched your whole senior year. And that's wild to think about. You pitched one game your senior year and got drafted in the 10th round. That's just not normal. So, I mean, obviously you were special and they saw that.
Yeah, I had the arm strength and then I could spin the ball well too. And they saw that. So I got drafted in the 10th round at 18. I finished my ACL rehab with the Reds. And going into pro ball at 18 years old is, it's tough. You're just kind of thrown into the real world and like the professional setting. And there's a ton of adjustments that are made there. And I'm really thankful for a lot of the coaches that help kind of mold me into the man that I am today. Because at 18, you're thrown to those guys, and those are the men that are around you that teach you how to handle your business and how to be a professional. So it's a lot to deal with, but at the end of the day, it teaches you some quality skills going forward. I kind of, in my career, I was a top prospect in their organization and kind of went up a level each year. And then I got kind of stuck at low A. That's when I started to, understand the consistency of routine and what you need. And that's a lot of the experience that I get with the players in house at Kova, just from those experiences as a player myself. But they still had the stuff, and Tejay was on that team that year, and he's dominated. He was throwing like 89, just carving lineups with 4 nasty pitches. Look at him now, throwing 100 in the big leagues. You're bad.
It's a goal for everyone.
Yep. But repeated low A, made some adjustments to kind of mindset, and ended up seeing some pretty good results there as a bullpen guy. And then
that was 2016, correct? 2015,
yeah,
15 and
2015, and then 16.
Yep.
And then in 2016, I finished in high A, didn't do well. And then I go into the off season. I trained my butt off, really got after it, showed up to spring training. And maybe wasn't prepared because my throwing program, definitely from what I know now, was not very good.
Yeah.
But I showed up to spring training, and we have a 10-minute live BP. We'll probably get into that eventually. But basically wasn't prepared for the demands. So I threw in live, elbow started hurting, blew it out the next game. And that's, where me and Tejay really got close, because like a week later, he blew his out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's where really the deeper stuff as far as player development starts for us, because we had, we were thrown into this situation, and with his mindset and my mindset, we want to come out of that better, and we both did. We both did very well coming off of surgery. We worked our butt off. Hardest workers in the room, hands down, no question.
No question at all. I don't think we never really talked about that. And we never, like, me and you never had that conversation. It was like, hey, we need to be the hardest workers in the room at any given moment. We never had that conversation, but I think instinctively we both knew exactly what the job was. And, as Kobe Bryant says, job not finished. Like, we had things to do. So, and I think even just me seeing you get after it at that really high level, and then you seeing me get after it at that really high level, like, it really just kind of like turned into this it was like a super competitive environment between me and you, where we were continuously always talking crap to each other, but like in the most friendly, like, I want the best for you way, which is like the coolest. Like, if you've never experienced that environment, like, it's really, really, really fun. And where you're like, he just jumped an inch higher than me, and I'm going to jump an inch higher than him. Like, watch this. Like, go sit down, buddy. I'm going to watch this. And then you jump an inch higher, and then he gets back up and he jumps an inch higher. And it's just like this fight. But you're like, you're secretly hoping he kind of beats you so that you can go beat him again. And it's just a lot of fun, man. So that was like my first Tommy John experience, 2017.
Yeah, you can't beat good training partners.
No,
I can tell you
no,
that. And I think
environment. And that's a whole thing, a whole another caveat that we can talk about at Kova, because Kova has the environment, and because of what we did, we knew what it takes and how to kind of cultivate that environment.
100%, 100%. So, and then even in the same scenarios come up in our business relationship as well. Like, there's ups and there's downs, and there was days when TJ would come in and not maybe be as, and he sees me getting after it that day, and like he goes, and then we
Yeah.
get better, and then like, vice versa. Like I'm kind of being soft that day, and TJ's like, let's go, like let's
Yeah.
get after it, and then I get after it, and then we just feel great, and it's a really good relationship that we have.
Yeah.
Kind of touching on the end of my career, came back from Tommy John, and then went to Daytona, or went to Billings. You know, Going back there was awesome, and I pitched really well. I was fully prepared for that, and it was kind of a rehab assignment for me. And then I went back to Daytona, went there, and I was throwing the ball exceptionally well, better than I've ever thrown the ball in my entire life. I was like 95, 97, touching an 8 and 9. Breaking ball was
Yeah.
really good. Taught myself how to throw a breaking ball.
Yep.
Self-taught breaking ball with your help too. We
Yeah.
worked together with our stuff as well, like playing catch. And then that was my free agent year. That was year 7 for me. So it was either, get signed or don't get signed. And at the end of that, I had some elbow issues, and I was actually on the DL to finish the year. So I was on the bench, I was supporting the guys, and I did my best there. But I went into the off season, and the images said that my elbow was fine, and I don't know if that was the case. But I essentially, I trained my butt off that off season. And then I went up to hang out with TJ to throw Rapsodo bullpen. And it's funny because I actually threw for a few teams at a high school in the Houston area, and I was
Mhm.
95.
Yep.
I was 95. Breaking ball was good, and I recovered from it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I go up and I'm throwing the bullpen with TJ, and I'm not feeling good playing catch. I get up there and I'm throwing like 83, and it's not feeling good. And I think, I knew at that point in time that I had retorn it, and TJ knew it too. Like we have an unbelievable amount of body awareness, and you could just tell. And I had to make that decision. At that point, in my life, I wasn't in the best spot to go pay for surgery myself and do rehab myself. And that was it for me. I decided to hang them up, and I had to make money, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do next. And that's when I dove straight into player development. And ever since then, it's been an ongoing process of self-studying and learning and growing as a coach. And I absolutely love it. And I would not want to do anything else. Absolutely nothing.
Yep.
I love every aspect of coaching.
Yep.
Um,
No, I completely agree. It's such a rewarding job. It's such a rewarding job, and you don't get to you're not ever out of the game of baseball. You're still playing and helping the sport that you grew up loving, and you get to help the next generation. It's really very
I'm
rewarding.
married to the game.
Married to the game,
I'm
baby.
married to the game.
That's sick.
Um,
No, I think that's really good. And then so we can kind of pause there. I'll tell my story, and then we'll kind of like link back up and tell how
okay.
like the ending of your you kind of went into player
Yeah.
development, and then we'll link back up there and talk about Kova. So
Good. Yeah.
to go, my story, I grew up doing lessons, doing the typical pitching lessons. I was always the best pitcher on the team growing up. I never was like the hardest throwing pitcher on the team. There's always that guy, like we always had like a guy like Kivel on the team who just threw the piss out of the ball. I was always like a pitcher. Like I knew how to like go up, go down, go in, go out. Here's my breaking ball. Like try and hit this again. Like good luck. Kind of that's how I pitched. And since I didn't have that elite fastball, I had to have good secondary stuff. I think that kind of forced me to have good secondary stuff. So I went into high school. I was just talking about this today. Actually, I was super over the top, arm not rotating in my plane at all. Big curveball, 4-seam guy, and I remember I was probably 85, 88 my junior year. Let me back up a little bit. I went to high school with Noah Syndergaard. So he was a senior when I was a sophomore. We went I was on varsity with him. So he was like number one. I was number two. So pretty cool, like experience to be able to get to watch him, a first rounder out of high school. He's a 95, 98, like blowing smoke. And I'm over here just has Captain Hook, just have a good curveball. That's all I got. Not a good fastball.
TJ, where are you from, man?
I'm from Texas, baby. The best
From
state.
Texas. Yeah.
Mansfield,
Texas.
Mansfield, Texas. I kind of skipped out on that. That's okay. Mansfield, Texas. Mansfield Legacy. Yep. Broncos, baby. So played on varsity my sophomore year. Played with Noah. It was cool to watch. He got drafted in the first round. I went, coming back my junior year. Like I said, I was super over the top. UTA was out watching me one day, and I fielded a ground ball and just kind of like fielded it and like ripped it over to first, like a super athletic throw. And the UTA coach talked to me after the game, was like, "Hey, you threw that ball way harder than you threw any other ball to home plate. Like, do you know why that is?" And I was like, no, why? He was like, well, you were just super athletic and you weren't thinking and you threw the ball. Like, he was like, I feel like when you're on the mound, you're very methodical and you're trying to hit this very over the top position. So I remember going, little did he know, like the actual term of that, which is like rotating, putting your arm on the rotation of the plane, right? Plane of rotation. So I thought it was so interesting that, a UTA coach had like kind of found that and helped that for me. So I ended up, that was the summer between my junior and senior year. I had like a 3 or 4 mile an hour jump. I ended up being like 90, 92, 90, somewhere in there, 90, 92 with some good arm side run because I'm a little bit lower slot now. And, I had a really good summer and I got invited to this all-star game and it was at the Ranger Stadium, super cool experience and not a prospect. No one knew my name. Small schools were looking at me and went to this all-star game and had a 1-2-3 inning in front of the right people. And, that's really all it took for me was TCU was there, Oklahoma was there, Arizona was there. And I think I was 90, 94 that inning and had a 1-2-3 inning, punched 2 guys out, had a ground ball. And, you throw in front of the right people at the right time and you just get that opportunity. And I think I really, really stepped on it that day. And it was just a really good opportunity for me. So fast forward a little bit, I ended up going, go ahead.
Hold on. Let me hop in. So I want players that watch this to understand, one, you got to go out and do it. And I did it and you did it. Call it showing out. Like you go out, you prepare, and you go out and you do it, and you create opportunities for yourself. What we're doing at Kova is we're building that right there. You went out and you were 90, 94, right? One time, and then boom, Tejay Antone's on the map.
Opportunity.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes. You go out and you execute, but you also have the stuff and the numbers to back it as well.
100%.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I feel like that even goes into like a deeper understanding of like, okay, if I'm 80 miles an hour as a high school, do I want to go showcase that? Like, do I want to go showcase 80, 83? Like if that's my peak performance, okay, sure. Like, let's go showcase that and let's try and find a school for you. Cause like, I want all my kids to try and play at the next level, no matter what their skill level is. And I want to try and help guys do that. But if I'm going to be honest with kids, I know you're going to be honest with kids. If you're throwing 80, 83, and I think you got 87 in the tank, I'm going to say don't play. I'm going to say do not play in front of a scout because if a scout pulls his gun out and it says 80 miles an hour and you got 87 in the tank, he's going to remember you throwing 80. He's not going to remember. He's not going to be like, oh, that kid might throw 87 someday. He's going to have to write down what he saw. And when every time your name comes up, he's going to think, oh, well, I saw him one time. He was 80 miles an hour. But that's for a whole nother one.
100%. 100%.
So, yeah, opportunity, man. Opportunity.
Yeah, so you went to that and you showed out, and then what happened next?
So got offered a scholarship from Oklahoma and TCU. My dad played football at Oklahoma, has a national championship ring. So it was kind of tough for me to choose between Oklahoma and TCU being like an Oklahoma Sooner alumni house. I wanted to stay closer to home. Kirk Saarloos was at TCU. I was super excited just for the opportunity of being close to home and developing. And so I chose TCU and, one of the greatest choices of my life, just kind of set me up for the rest of my life. I met my wife there and I learned a lot from Kirk Saarloos and it was just really, really good opportunity. So I got drafted out of high school in the 22nd round by the Mets. They offered me $250,000 I said, no, I want to, I think I can be higher than a 22nd round pick. I kind of understood that if you're a late round pick, you had a big uphill battle once you got to the professional world. And I needed a little bit more backing to my name before I just like fully committed to the professional,
Yeah, it was a smart move.
yeah,
Smart
yes.
move.
And that's it's a very cool decision to have, but it's a tough decision at the same time.
Yes.
So decided to go to TCU, went there for a year, didn't do that well, had an opportunity, walked a bunch of dudes, had another opportunity, didn't do well. Just wasn't great, but I learned a lot. And, sometimes that's really all you need. Like, it was just a great learning opportunity. I got better. I think my velo went down a little bit. I was like 88 to 90. So I had to learn how to pitch at a higher level with like less velo. And that's kind of where the true development of like my breaking balls came in, because I knew I had decent breaking balls and I had to make them better to get these guys out. So I ended up, after that year, I transferred to Weatherford College, worked with Flint Wallace. He's down at Texas Baseball Ranch now. So I worked with him for, that whole entire year. And it was just incredible, man. Great coach. He was definitely ahead of his time. We were doing weighted balls and long toss and had a lot of like connection balls. This was back in 2013, 14. So way before his time, way ahead of the game. Other people were not doing these kinds of things. So I think driveline was just beginning at this point, maybe not even yet. And so I had huge velo gains and went from like, I think I got up to 97 in front of some scouts, had an incredible sophomore year at Weatherford College, got drafted in the 5th round, highest draft pick ever out of Weatherford College, and just took it and ran. I did recommit after JUCO. JUCO is a 2-year school, so I did recommit to Auburn, University of Auburn, and I forewent my amateur status and decided to go professional. So I flew down to Arizona, got on the AZL train, and that's.
I remember that day.
Because I had forgot that Kivel had gotten drafted by the Reds. We played together in our senior year in high school,
forever.
and which was 2012. And then we reconnected in 2014. I was like, "Oh, what's up, Kiv? Like, you remember me? Like, we played together in high school." He said, "Yeah, of course." And so we kind of got together. We both went to Billings, Montana that first year. We won the championship, the Pioneer League championship, which was just so much fun. Made so many friends. Like, I mean, we could just go down the list and name them all, but like so many friends in baseball, and it was just such a great opportunity. I did well in the minor leagues. Made an all-star team the next year.
My nickname. What was my nickname that year? What nickname did Tejay Antone give me?
What did I give you that year?
Mr. Velo.
Oh yeah, this guy would come out of the bullpen throwing 98 to 100. Like, of course, Mr. Velo.
Dude, I remember the draft. I remember Tejay Antone selected by the Reds, and then I remember Avon Rochelle, a guy that we played with on the Banditos, was like, "Dude, TJ just got picked up." I was like, "Oh, sick!" And I remember you came in and you came in, and I saw you the first time after you got drafted. We were eating lunch before we headed out, and I remember I saw you there, and I remember Tom Brown coming up to me and saying, "Hey, can this guy pitch?" I'm like, "Yeah, he can pitch."
That's about it. Just pitch, couldn't throw hard.
Yeah.
So,
but in Billings, you were 95.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. I mean, so like
when you first came up.
when I used to, so what I would throw sinkers and I would sit like 88, 92. And when it was time, like, certain 0-2 counts, certain guys in the box, got to go up in the zone. Like, I would let it eat. I'd switch to a 4-seam and I would let the ball eat. And everyone's like, "Oh, where'd that come from? Like, you pitch at 88, the guy just throws 96. It's like, yeah, just, pick and choose. So it's more like the pitching aspect of it, instead of just like throwing as hard as you can every time. So I did well. I actually didn't do that well in Billings, but those guys are just no approach hitters. Next year, made the All-Star team in low A, went to high A in 2016, had the most wins in the Florida State League. I had 15 wins, and it was going well. Like, I was doing well. I was making strides. We had a really good group of guys moving up together, like Tyler Malley, Luis Castillo. So the next year was, I had kind of secured a AA spot, and we went to spring training in 2017, and my boy Kivel went down, and I was like, "Oh man," it's just like watching him, tear his UCL was just like kind of devastating because I watched it happen. And I wasn't feeling great either, but I just thought I had a little flexor, just soreness, like early in spring training.
I remember
And the
talking
next,
about that.
yeah, we were talking about it together. And, I didn't think anything of it. Just go in there and get some scrapes, some needles and massage and just, hopefully it clears up soon. And I went out there my next outing had like 3 innings, tore it. I didn't think it was torn at that moment. And I tried to throw a bullpen like 2 days later, couldn't even lift my arm at all. And I was just like, man, we got to get an MRI. So ended up being torn. Yeah. That's where me and Kivel, we decided to live together in 2017 for our rehab. And just had so much fun with that guy, him clowning around and us getting after it. It was just a lot of fun because it's not a fun situation to be in. You're alone. We didn't have our girlfriends with us at the time. Like it was just tough. Like we were just kind of lonely, no families. And, essentially, Kivel was my family at that moment in time. I mean, he still is, but like, that's your family. That's the person you hang out with all day long. And I think we only had one yelling match and I won. And, only one. Hey, that's pretty good. If we only had one, I'm not gonna lie.
That's pretty good. Yeah. We got into it pretty bad.
That was fun. We never fought. We never fought though. It was just like yelling.
No, we were just frustrated. Yeah, and it can get frustrating. Yeah. Little things get frustrating when you're rehabbing.
Yeah, we were living. We were making no money. I was working at Lululemon. We were making $500 every 2 weeks. We had 4 Dominicans living in our house so that we could save a little bit of money. It was. Adamas, like, oh man, Pikachu.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Good time. So, I mean, we learned a ton. Like I like Kivel said, at that moment in my life, I didn't really know what was going on. So I was just asking questions. Well, why are we doing 12 reps here? Why don't we do 8? Just simple questions. And, we had really good PT, Josh Bickle, Brad Epstein was there helping us. We had Morgan was our strength coach, and hopefully one day we can get Morgan on here on an interview. Nate Tamargo was our strength coach. Man, he really just like anchored down on the form of like movement and just movement efficiency and just understanding like all of that. So we had a really incredible group of coaches that just really pushed us and answered questions and taught us a lot of what we know today. And it's really cool that all those guys were a part of my life, part of our lives, and really taught us the way during that time.
Mm-hmm.
I came out in 2018 feeling great. They sent me back to high A, and I did well. I did really well. I had like a 3.1 or something like that. And the following year was 2019, and that's when I really started hitting my stride. Velo was jumping up. I was a AA starter, made AA All-Star team. Got moved up to AAA, hit a brick wall, like literally and physically. Like it was so hard to throw to the AAA hitters. They're so good. But the name of the game, and I always say this, is adapt to survive. And I got to AAA and I found out like the way I had been pitching is not going to work in the big leagues. And so it's time to change. And so I started ripping more four seams, ripping more breaking balls, and start getting a lot of swing and misses later in the year. And I figured it out. 2020 happened. At this time, I kind of started running it up to like 97 consistently in AAA that year. 2020, I go to spring training. I finally get put on the 40-man roster, which was just such a blessing for the Reds to do that. When did 2020 happen? We go to spring training. I come into spring training and I'm like 95, 98. And it could be a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of, got to show out for these guys trying to make the squad. And, people are like, oh, who's this guy? Like, what happened? Well, you were like 92 last year. Like, yeah, man, I work, brother. It's like, I'm not saying it's easy, but like you put your mind to it a little bit and like.
Yeah. And Tejay went out and sought out some help with how to optimize his development and his training. And in that process, that's why Tejay's a great coach.
Yeah.
Now.
So
because you can't beat experience.
Exactly.
You can't beat it.
Yeah. So actually I did skip this out. I went over to Driveline and worked with some of the guys over there, did a little bit of pitch design, understood a little bit more of their like philosophies, and really kind of bought into that. And because I had like an understanding of the programming and understanding of like actually how to accomplish some of those movements. So we all got sent home for quarantine, and luckily, Velo, which is now TBT, opened their doors for me, let me train there during quarantine, which is, big against the rules at the time. But, I had a key, so it was just only me in there. And I was getting after it. I was in there by myself and I was getting after it. And I was running it up to, mid to upper 90s and facing hitters. I faced Barfield probably 50 times and live ABs. I ended up building myself up to about 5 innings. And I showed up to minicamp in 2020. And let me back up a little bit. So in the minor leagues, I wasn't making no money. So every offseason I did lessons. And this past offseason, which was between 2019 and 2020 season, I decided to kind of like match the driveline system, which was like a small group setting of athletes training. So I had between 2019 and 2020, I had 8 athletes. Decided to track all their velocities and all their gains and do somewhat of a driveline, programming and, see if they make gains, like see if this thing is actually real. And all of my kids made about 5-mile-an-hour gains. It was absolutely incredible. And they loved it as well. It saved the parents money because we were doing small group training instead. And I made some decent money at the time. So 2020 went to spring training, came back, and all these kids started reaching out to me. They're like, "Hey, are you doing training?" Because all the schools shut down. I was like, "Yeah, you guys can come. Make sure you're not sick. All this stuff, And that group of 8 ended up growing to about 25, 30 kids just slowly over time while we were in quarantine. It's supposed to be in quarantine. And, it's fine. Like we were getting after it and they were having a lot of fun. And at this time I started reaching out to Kivel and asking him, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like, and he was working with some kids out in the field, out in a baseball field, and they were doing something similar. So we started bouncing programming ideas and, "Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Okay, you're doing this for conditioning. I like that. What do you think of this?" We were doing a lot of talking. And his group of kids were growing a lot as well. So it was cool to kind of see both of our, little side hustles begin to grow.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, "Hey, I'm about to leave for season." And I told Kivel, I kind of want you to like move up here. I want you to live in my house and take over all my kids. Like you can have all my income. You can live in my house for free. Like I don't care. I just can't lose all these 30 kids that I have built up. Like when I come back in the fall, I need this many kids. Like if I leave now, they're just going to disappear forever. They're going to go find a different coach. So Kivel, thank God, moved up, trusted me and wanted a new chapter in his life. And I know that was a big step for you. You want to talk on that for a moment?
Yeah. So after I got out of the game, I was at a facility where I did lessons, and then I started implementing systems, kind of like you did, where I started doing group training. And this is while
Yeah.
you were grinding, and I was grinding like you were grinding as a player. I was grinding as a coach. I was in the war room essentially, like just learning how to put things together as a coach. So I started putting systems together, started training groups. Um, Ended up not working out in the business side at that first place I was at. So then I went to another place, kind of same thing. I actually ventured off into strength conditioning because the place that I was moving to work at needed more of that. And I still did throwing lessons, but that's when I kind of put my foot more into the strength conditioning door, which I already had a really good base of understanding from my career. But then from there, I met Grant Fowler, opened my mind in other ways. And that's what kind of shapes a lot of stuff that we do at Kova now. But that gave me experience, like almost a year of experience just doing strength conditioning by myself, which goes a long way, being on the floor with guys and programming and modifying things. But then from that place, ended up not working out business side as well. And then I go to this place called Dynasty where I get into 30-minute lessons. Going back even before when I stopped playing, I dove head first into just understanding biomechanics
Yeah.
of throwing. And I didn't sleep most nights. I would just stay up till like 4 a.m. just watching every little piece of content of
Big
throwing
rabbit
the game.
hole guy.
And I've been
Yeah.
big rabbit hole guy, and I had been doing this because my grandparents would slow down video when I was 9 years old of guys throwing in the big leagues. Look at his legs, look at his arms. So I already had that established from a very young age. I was very intuitive on how guys moved, and I was very interested in it. I'm very interested in all movement too, but strictly biomechanics for baseball because that tied into what I was doing. But then I jumped into the lesson model where I was doing lessons heavy at Dynasty. Every 30 minutes had a new kid come in. Um, and you get volume as a coach there, just like with the strength conditioning stuff. You got kids coming in, kids coming in. In that model of 30 minutes, you can't do much, but you learn how to be really good in 30 minutes. That's not the ideal model like what we have now at Kova, but got a ton of volume there, a bunch of experience as a coach. And then I was also coaching teams on the side as well, and I was working a job at a warehouse from 7 to 4 p.m. So I was grinding. And just trying to make as much money as I could and establish myself, but my
Yep.
passion was coaching. Like I would walk around the warehouse with podcasts and learning like nutrition or biomechanics or like just completely obsessed
Yeah.
with it. But then quarantine happened, like TJ said. I started doing my own thing there, and in a field behind Dynasty. And like same thing with TJ. I had like maybe 6 kids, and went to 10 kids, and went to 12 kids, and I went to 14 kids, and people really loved
Mm-hmm.
the structure, and a lot of it came from me, explaining why it works over the one-on-one model, and people really loved it. And then quarantine stopped, doors opened back up, and I tried to kind of keep that going. And because I was in somebody else's business, they didn't want to do it like that. So I was like, dang, well, this stinks. So now I was back in the 30-minute lesson model coaching, and I was talking to TJ on the phone, like, man, like this stinks. Like, I want to open my own place and do my own thing. And, everything tied into where we're at this point. I did my thing, you did your thing. And then I made the decision to move up, which is a great decision. And here
Here we are
we are
now.
now.
So yeah, that first this was so I had my first big league season in 20. Did really well and came back, and Kivel had grown the group of kids of like 30 that I had grown to about 60, 65 kids, and then when I got back, we ended up growing it to about 80 kids, and I think that just speaks volumes. One, for the product that we were producing, like just like the way we were doing things, and the gains that people were seeing. And we weren't doing any marketing. It was just the kids telling their friends like, "Hey, I'm doing this. Like this is a lot of fun. I'm seeing gains. You guys got to come check it out." And then their boys would come, and then their boys would come, and it just kept growing. And it was a lot of fun for us too. We were in every day, 4 to 9, every single day. I mean, we were getting after it Saturdays too. And David's over there doing hitting, and we're inside TBT. And at that point, we were kind of taking over TBT or Velo at the time, and it was just like, man, what do we do now? Like, I mean, we have our own business, we have our own clients. Like, we need to try to find something else. And we started looking. Nothing was open. It was really expensive, and not even good areas. And
Yeah, we couldn't find the right situation or the
yeah,
right building really. And we had like been, we agreed, we're like, okay, well, we're just gonna wait another year and save up some more
yeah.
capital and,
So we
do it
decided to
actually.
wait, and I was praying about it, and hopefully something will open up. And literally, I think the next week, we got a phone call from Rhett, and he was like, "Yeah, like next door is opening up," and I'm like, "What?" And the
Yeah.
price was great, the location was incredible because it was literally right next door to where we were at now, and we hit the ground running, man. I mean, we were ready to go. I talked to David. You ready to switch? We switched. I set up the paint, the flooring, the ground, everything, got everything rolling. We ended up getting the lease for December 1st, and we were open and rolling by like December 18th, like 2 weeks later, little more over 2 weeks. I mean, they built a concrete wall, the
Yeah.
plyo wall that you guys see. I mean, we were every single day we were waking up at like 7 a.m., getting there, um, doing everything we could to get Kova ready, and then 4 p.m. would hit, and we'd go next door and start training kids. And some nights we would finish at
Yeah.
9.
Yeah, we're building the wall, we're laying down
Mm-hmm.
floor, we were just kind of getting things set up the way we want to. But that wall was
Oh, I
like,
know. Yeah, I
woo, that was a
remember. I remember
project
the
right
like
there.
one of the we were getting towards the end, and one of the nights you were like, "Hey, I'm just gonna stay over here." And like instead of train, I ended up training all the kids myself that day. I think it was like an easy day, and you were like, you stayed over there and you finished the wall by yourself, and it finally was finished. But it was a long it was a long days, man. A lot of heavy lifting, concrete sucking down dry concrete, not doing that right. But that wall is awesome. So I
Yeah,
think that
that's goes to show like what we do though.
yeah, I was just that's what
We just
exactly
kind
what I was
of
gonna
dive
say.
in and figure it out.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. So that year we ended up seeing like pretty much all we ended up ending the year with probably about 80 pitchers, um, probably another 30 to 40 hitters, and all the kids saw gains, man. Just all of them did, and all of them were having a great time. And I think that right there, we started to trust our own process at that point. We were like, okay, we have a process, and now we're in the refining the process mode. It's like, how can we improve it? We're constantly asking, how can we improve it? And I think that also um, talks about like how great Kova's getting. I think I want to say year after year we've been open for just over 1 year, but even just month after month, we look back and we at each month and we go, okay, what could we have improved here? Okay, we could have improved that. Let's improve it. And we try something, and if it doesn't work, we're like, okay, how can we improve it? Okay, let's try something else. And we're constantly evaluating and asking for feedback from our athletes and asking for feedback from parents
Yeah.
and evaluating each other, and
Hmm.
it's just constantly improving. Like it's a train that can't be stopped at this point. And I think
Yeah, and that's on the business side and the player development side. And those two are it's very
yeah.
important how they mesh.
So
Very,
my
very important.
my philosophy, like when I wanted to start it, was one. I was doing lessons for 1 hour, $70 lessons for 1 hour. Um, I felt bad for charging that much, but I needed to make the money. So I wanted to switch to two guys an hour and lower the price so that it was more affordable. So I switched it 2 guys an hour, moved it down to like $40 per guy, and I ended up making like $10 more. They ended up saving some money, and they loved it. Then I switched from 2 to 4 and lowered the price again just to make it more affordable so they can come in more times a week, because I knew that coming in and doing a lesson one time a week just is not going to get the changes that you want in an athlete. I knew that it's consistency, and that consistent change over time is really what we're looking for. You're not going to just create a super stud doing a 1 hour lesson once a week. It's just not going to happen. And so that's where our philosophy comes from. And if you want to touch on that a little bit of like what you think about our model of our floor
Yeah,
model and why it works.
yeah. So there's a lot of things that go into that. If you start from kind of the root and look at both sides of it, like you have your one-on-one model and then you have your group training model. There's two spectrums of that. There's one-on-one where you're going to get, overcoached, or people are just going to say things to you that make you think you're getting better, but really they just want you to come back in. And those are the two biggest downsides of that. And then you have your group training model where most of the time it's to make money as a business. And that's when people will go like 8, 12, 15, 30 people in one group. And then you go down the side of like, well, there's just not enough attention from coach to player. And what we do is we find kind of a happy medium there. We have 4 to 5 guys, even sometimes 6, come on the floor. And on the floor we have myself, and we usually have 2 other coaches, and it'll probably go to 3. Um, so you're getting one-on-one intention there. Um, but because the price is lower, you're also increasing the frequency of training. You can't make changes one time a week. It's not enough frequency in order to move more efficiently and to build the body necessary to play at the next level. So when you find that balance, boom, you get the results. Boom, you're saving money, and then you build the culture because people are in there consistently. And then we step in and we become guides to these players because they're in the building consistently, and we help them with what's going on outside as well. So I think we've done a really good job balancing that, and we've also refined our systems inside of that 4 to 6 people in a group to where it's optimized to where like you're going to get as much attention as you need, and you're also going to be held accountable as a player after you have been communicated to on where you need to improve. And that accountability slash attention loop is
Yep.
just everything from the coach to the player. So I
Yep.
think we've done
And
a
we're
really
starting
good job there.
to, give that feedback to the players. Talking about assessments that we're doing now, all of the information that we're giving with the assessment, constant feedback of like velocity of like the radar guns. And I think people kind of try to, knock that, or like, oh, well, they just throw on velo, or all they worry about is velo. And I think the consistent feedback is huge. And we've seen just huge gains just from kids knowing like what their velo are, or what their velo is. And just so they can start to relate, like, okay, at this intensity, I'm at this velo. At this intensity, I'm at this velo, and start to understand their body and understand intensity and regulation of intensity and programming. And, I did that post talking about be your best coach. And I'm huge on that. I really want to, we really try and do a good job of like educating these kids of like, all right, these are the positions we want to hit. This is how you create like tensegrity within these positions. And this is how you flow through these sequences. And all of this matters. And then all of the stuff you do off the field matters. And all of the stuff you do on the field matters. And they start to understand, the kids that really buy into the program and really buy into like what we're telling them, start to understand like, okay, all of this does matter. And those are the kids that see the enormous jumps. There are kids that just think just throwing on the radar gun is going to make them throw harder. And that's not the case. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing, the whole global system.
Yeah.
It's all encompassing. And I think the environment really our environment is unmatched. We create the PR environment, the PR city. I think we just celebrate it so well, and we push guys and we hold them accountable, and that they hold themselves accountable, and they see their boy, even if their boy is, 3 miles an hour under them, they see their boy PR and they're like, oh, I got a PR. And then they kind of hold themselves accountable, and then they PR, and then their boy who's 3 miles an hour under them, he PRs again. And just like when me and Kivel were when we were in rehab and we were kind of going back and forth and competing, that animal comes out of you. That animal instinct comes out, and you begin to compete at another level. It's no longer, all right, I'm just here to play baseball, or I'm just here to like throw harder. You begin to compete at this new level that you've never experienced before. And I think that's what we kind of bring out of the kids. And that's what you need to play at the next level. That's what you need to play at the next level. And, I think that's really great. In terms of like I think that's really great in terms of the first podcast. I wanted everyone to understand who we were. I wanted everyone to understand where we came from, because I think that's very important, and what we've been through, and our hearts behind training. We want every single kid in our building to reach their highest potential, whatever that is. If that's to be the best varsity player that you could possibly be, then I'm going to do my best to get you there. If that's to be a future big leaguer, Hall of Famer, you know what, dude, I'm going to help you get there. And what's really cool about that is we've both been there. We've both been professional. I'm still playing professionally. And that's the other edge that we have on a lot of coaches and a lot of facilities, that they don't. They haven't been there. They haven't been able to experience it. They haven't been able to experience the mental side of that. It's cool, and they understand a lot, but there's another side to it. And that's actually doing it. And that's a whole nother animal. So being able to kind of like teach kids that side of it is really fun as well, because that's just the game of baseball, man. It's the individual team sport that holds you accountable as a teammate to win the game, but also, kind of helps you push yourself, because it is an individual team sport, and you can't rely on your teammates the whole entire time. You got to show up and do your work. And, that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
And then everybody wins. Yeah, it's like life, man. Baseball's the greatest game in the world, hands down. Um, I wanted to touch on the environment real quick, at
Tell me
Kova.
about the environment at Kova.
Yeah, so exactly what you just said. Um, I think a lot of coaches and players are very in tune with what they're doing, and that is important. What you're doing is important in terms of training and programming, but you can't beat good training partners and you can't beat the atmosphere because even if you're doing the worst thing, those worst things are going to get you better because of how
Yep.
you are going about those things. So don't get super caught up in the specificity of training. At the end of the day, if you're doing something that's challenging your body and you're in the environment, like what we have at Kova Sports, where players are holding each other accountable and they want the guy next to them to win. And if someone's doing better than them, they want to try to do better. And that comes from me and TJ. That started with us, and we've instilled that in our players. And like you said, it's a train that you can't stop.
100%.
You're not going to stop it.
Well, I think that's good for today. If you guys, enjoyed that podcast, comment, message us, tell us what you want to hear more of. We do have a lot of things lined up to talk about. We're going to talk about, we're going to really dive into pitching. We're going to dive into programming. We're going to dive into Tommy John rehab. I think we both have a really good insight there. We're going to dive into a lot of things. We're going to talk about travel ball development, group settings, water bags, a lot of things, plyos, a lot of things that y'all want to hear about, that we want to talk about and give you a better insight of what they actually are and how they can help you. But if that was great, like definitely check out on our Instagram page, check out our link tree. We have a lot of free information, free pivot pickoff guide. We got hitting guides and starting to get more stuff on there as well. So if that's something you're interested, shoot us a follow, subscribe to us here on YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And, we're going to try and do these things. We're going to try and produce once a week, once or every 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. But, we just want to get on here and give you guys as much information as we can, tell you all a little bit more about us, and kind of go from there. Kivel, you got any closing comments?
No, I think we are helping people in our niche and in our environment inside our doors. And we want to start to help people outside of our doors. And that's why we want to get this information out to you guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.